interesting point. I doubt any of the panelists maybe would disagree with the fact that freedom of the press is important, and yet Gallup studies, it's an annual study done for the First Amendment Congress, and others show that people in this country are willing to clip the wings of the First Amendment because of the fact that the media does show it if they haven't. And those who watch this smart trial must have some sense about that. Diane, you started us off by talking about this question of taste. And here's Rod and all our other friends in the media, and here we are sometimes giving things to the media. How do you arbitrate? Can you arbitrate? You've got a law on one hand that says total freedom, and yet the public is willing to clip that law unless some taste is used. Have you got any suggestions as to how to walk that line?
Well, I think it's a question of education. And I think it's a question of establishing norms and role models, and really starting from the beginning. And we have role models about this is a free society. Everybody goes out and gets what they clip. We want our piece of the pie. Well, what happens when you take your piece of the pie? Someone else doesn't get pie. I mean, it's just, that's the way it is. That's the way it is in the world. We don't have enough room to go around. But I think it's important. I was thinking about this on the way up, Pat, and what I was thinking was, I wish there was some way we could establish some kind of a system like our jury system. And I don't mean that there should be arbiters of taste. I don't mean there should be absolute indicators and censors of taste. But there should be some way of teaching morality in this area, just the way there is religious teaching. There's a religion called ethical culture that supposedly does this. I'm not a member of it. Since most of us, or many of us, have gotten away from the traditional religions, and our religion really is our television and our public media, for the most part, it's a sad story. We've forgotten.
Joe, Diane mentioned role models. One of the concerns a lot of people have is that maybe the role models today, for a lot of the young people coming up, instead of being moral or whatever you want to call them, tasteful, maybe two live crew. Should they therefore, if they're going to have a deleterious effect, should they be allowed to do those records and whatever it is they do?
I'm glad you left it undefined.
I've never heard am I missing anything? I never heard this.
Well, I had the distinct questionable pleasure of meeting Luther Campbell in debate on a radio station in New York. And it went back and forth just as this has this evening. And at some point, Luther was saying something to the effect that, well, I know what happened. At some point, the moderator was a woman, very articulate, very, I thought, very knowledgeable. And she was very objective right up until about the 25th minute of the 30-minute program. And finally, she seemed to, her face got a little flushed, and she really got into it. And she said, now, Luther, she said, a lot of my friends are very much upset because much of your music, not your music, but your lyrics seem to make out women as whores. And we don't like that. You talk about damaging vaginal walls. We don't like that. And, you know, why do you do that? I mean, what is your perception of women? You know what his answer to the ages was? If the shoe fits. I thought it was so powerful, the only thing intelligent but wrong he said all day, most of it wasn't even intelligent. I said, Luther, did you say, if the shoe fits? And he wanted to be very sure that I had it right, so by God, he said it again. There's nothing wrong with Luther Campbell except the fact that so many of the lyrics that he garbles are obscene. It's not even that they're sexist, which they are. They are obscene. And anybody, in my judgment, who wants to talk ever again after tonight on the issue of obscenity in the Constitution, read the decision by Gonzales in that case. It is the best researched, most logical, best articulated obscenity decision, as far as I'm concerned, written in this country.
Yeah. Now, wait, I want to give Marilyn, I don't know if you think Two Live Crew is hard or not. But what do you think about it?
I think people are much too afraid of things that they think are dangerous or different. I think people thought Wagner's opera was politically radical and dangerous and all this. I think you have to separate out music and what teenagers are into at age 14 or 15. These things I think are a lot less harmful than they seem.
Have you ever listened to their lyrics?
The lyrics are.
Have you ever seen them say some of on their stage performance.
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
And I don't know that anyone can truly, without seeing what they do and hearing what they say, talk about this, because it's quite unbelievable.
Well, you don't have to go and you don't have to hear it.
It is
So now, where are they now? And where would they have been without the whole issue?
They're in greater obscurity, Rod, than they were before that
Exactly,
started.
but I don't think they would have lasted anyway.
They've been canceled all over the country. They've gotten a new agent, you know, and I don't mean just a cleansing agent either. That's far from it.
If I may make an observation which can set this thing off.
But we already did.
I find it interesting that we always find in this country, the Supreme Court focuses on obscenity as having to do with sex. And that's the thing that we put restrictions on. We put restrictions on, make decisions around things that have to do with sex, not so much violence, not so much a lot of things that perhaps some of us here would say we think is obscene, but sex. Now we really focused on that, and we allow in this society, you know, the depiction of people being hung in the South, of people being butchered in wars, of all kinds of depictions. You can go and you can buy those books, but sex, no.
Would you stop that,
Sex,
John?
no. Would I stop what?
What you just described, would you stop that?
No, I wouldn't stop.
I agree with
I wouldn't stop
you.
that. What?
I thought you were changing your...
No, but why? What I'm saying is, we're trying to save our kids from seeing things about sex. We don't want to save them from anything else. Why
Well,
is
no,
that?
not necessarily.
Why is that?
That's not true.
John,
Why is
what about the difference, and this will further complicate it, between Rod's newspaper, which is pure press, protected by the First Amendment, and broadcast media, which the court has repeatedly said is not the same as a newspaper under the First Amendment? Why? Why is TV and radio different? Because guess who you have to go to get a license? How do you get a TV license? The government gives it to you. So the government can take it away. And as long as that happens, they can put restrictions. He doesn't get a license from anybody to print his newspaper. He can't. That's why we have the First Amendment. They used to, the British used to license newspaper presses, and we outlawed that. But because there are only so many channels, there are some differences, and that's why I think, frankly, there could be some restrictions on TV violence. Some restrictions, certainly during child hours, you know, that there is a line to be drawn. And to me, that amount of violence, John, is as obscene as the thing that Joe's concerned about.
Now, this is an interesting parallel here, because in this case, going back to the funding issue, the government has given authority and at least a budget to do their work to the FCC, and the FCC has clearly made decisions. They have, for example, done away with the fairness doctrine, that in these limited number of channels, you and I can make sure our message gets heard. You cannot advertise condoms. The Surgeon General can write us all a letter saying, please use condoms because of AIDS, but you can't say that on television. Now, is there any inconsistency in all of this? What the government does, what we do? What's a solution for some of this? What are we going to do? Someone has pointed out that every major issue in front of this country now, and probably through the decade, is going to have a First Amendment, some kind of a speech expression element in it. And you can see here you have a panel of people who obviously really know their stuff, and we're having a hard time here seeing it alike. Wrap this up for me here, gang. What are we going to do about this, Diane?
We have a right to wrap it up 6 different ways.
Wait, before you do that,
We can argue.
With a clarification, Mr. Robertson, you talked about the lynchings versus violence against sex or whatever, and the 2 Live Crew lyrics and say American Psychonauts, do you consider that a sexist issue or a violence issue?
To me, it doesn't. Choose your poison. It doesn't matter. The point I'm trying to make is we're not going to agree on what's obscene and what's not obscene in this society. We're not even going to agree, a lot of us, on what's moral and what's immoral. We're going to disagree on a lot of those issues. And the point being that in a free society, you know, you allow that kind of expression, and you let the marketplace make its decisions about, you know, whether or not they will accept it or how they will accept it. And so you allow the publication of these, you know, of these things, and you don't allow the government to be making distinctions about what is obscene and what is not obscene. Because but they still create, well, they create the decisions, they create the laws, they create the statutes upon which juries make decisions. You know, and that's the point. We have focused on this country as obscenity as being dealing with sex, and I think you and I would agree there are an awful lot of other obscenities in this country that don't relate to sex, to which the government doesn't say anything. Thank God.
One more question, then we're going to wrap it up. Dan?
Well, I think one of the issues for me about the First Amendment is, and I don't remember where I heard it, but that, as Joe pointed out, you know, the Bill of Rights was tacked on at the end, and as I understand history, it was because they realized the Constitution wasn't all there. They needed to make some protections, and that the First Amendment particularly was because we have a government that's run essentially by the will of the majority, that the Bill of Rights was designed to protect the minority from the individual from the will of the majority. And that's where I get very concerned when I start hearing people trying to restrict the exhibit. I mean, we've already seen the Mapplethorpe exhibit. Maryland saying, you know, that's not child pornography. Somebody else is saying, yes, it is. And my concern always comes back to, you know, if we start to let the majority rule on issues as important as speech and religion, and I think, as John pointed out, a lot of our concerns about obscenity relate to sex, which I see very much related to religion. I mean, a lot of groups who come out opposed to a lot of these things are religiously based, and their arguments, their reasons for doing it are religiously based. But I just think it's important to look at the First Amendment as a tool to protect the individual from the will of the majority. And a lot of times I hear people say, well, everybody wants it this way, or the reason that we shouldn't be bringing the flag is there's so much support for the flag, or whatever. And that's what concerns me, that the public doesn't understand, or we don't understand what the Bill of Rights is all about. And we continually think of the rule of majority, and that's not what that's there for.
I'd like to respond to that. The problem you have with your argument, Dan, is simply this, that had it not been for the majority, you would not have the Constitution. You would not have had the Bill of Rights. In Rhode Island, as I recall, I think it was a one-vote difference that brought that colony in support. As Judge Gonzalez again said in the Two Live Crew issue in this case, where they were found guilty of having obscene material in their lyrics, while it is certainly true in this country that the rights of the minorities must be protected, it is not true that the rights of the majority mean nothing. Now, if 42 states have obscenity laws, that says that initiatives, and I know initiatives were made in the other 8, the majority rejected having obscenity laws. You have obscenity laws here, here in New Hampshire. All right. The federal jurisdiction, as I mentioned earlier, is going more and more in the direction of protecting children from the evils and the exploitation of child porn and life. So you have a persuasion point. Gonzalez made very clear that he was telling people what was going on in Florida under that law now. He said, it is the stated purpose of the legislature that the majority elect to have the tightest restriction on obscenity in this state possible. If you differ with that, don't bring your plea to my court, bring it to Tallahassee and address it to the legislature. The point under the Constitution is it is not unconstitutional to have obscenity laws, nor is it constitutionally required to have obscenity laws. So you people of public relations, those who you don't agree with Gonzalez, he's with enough already. You agree with anything goes. Go sell your idea and good luck.
One more, Mike.
That's what I said. I think it is exactly.
Let's go down to a very basic question. What is the definition of obscenity?
I gave it earlier, sir. It's material appealing, the Supreme Court has ruled it's appealing to the prurient interest, material appealing to the prurient or lustful interest.
What does that mean?
It is patently offensive, and it's without serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value.
I agree with
And it
that.
goes through an entire process, pardon me, it goes through an entire process of examining material, taking it to a grand jury, getting an indictment, having a trial with defense attorneys, the whole process. I would paraphrase Churchill. Our system of jurisprudence here, based on the jury, is the worst system in the world except for all others.
And there's no agreement on what community standards are.
Of course, there is trial after
No,
trial.
no, oh.
But one more thing,
Joe.
this is driving me up the wall. In the last 3 years, there has been a 300% increase in prosecutions, and 90% of them have ended in convictions. Drives John nuts.
All right. I want to ask each of our panelists to give us kind of a wrap-up of where we are on the First Amendment in 1991 as we get ready to celebrate the bicentennial of this incredibly arguable document. Joe, you were just on, so pick it right up and give us a conclusion.
I will never smoke a Philip Morris again. No, that's easy. I don't smoke. I am very pleased to have been asked here this evening. I am very happy to be on a panel with such articulate and intelligent people. I think they are so intelligent that those who don't agree with me now probably will tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Diane, what's your wrap-up to all this?
Oh, well, my wrap-up's a little more serious, unfortunately. I think that Dan's point is probably the one I'd like to start with. The individual was very important in 1791, but you also have to look at the media in 1791. It was Ben Franklin's press and some small newspapers. We didn't have the ability for mass media, the capability of mass media that we have today. That changes a whole lot of things. We also had a different kind of an individual. He was self-reliant, being inner-directed, religiously guided, etc. In many cases, we don't have that today. What we've got is major media that instantly influences around the world in a matter of minutes the course of events. We have people rushing with microphones to talk to Saddam Hussein at the same time as they're rushing with microphones to talk to George Bush. Politics and moral issues and life and death matters are being debated and discussed in the media, and many times decided in the media. And then we have the surveys that have shown that television in particular, and the broadcast